Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about percentages. The word percent means out of 100. Now, in the symbol for percentage is here. Today I'm going to show you three things. First of all, let's change or convert percentages into fractions. Now, as you can see, fractions always have two parts, a numerator and a denominator. So say for example, we have got 30% and we are going to write it out as a fraction. So it's going to be 30 out of 100. Sometimes you will be asked to simplify this fraction. So simplification, what does it involve? You are supposed to divide both the numerator and the denominator by a common divisor. You can cancel out a zero in the numerator with a zero in the denominator. This is called cancellation. Now, actually, what we have done here is we have divided the numerator as well as the denominator by 10. So we can write it out as 3 over 10. Now this is the fraction in the simplest form. Say we have 40%, which means it can be written out as a fraction as 40 over 100. You need to simplify it, so we can divide, in other words, the numerator and the denominator by a common divisor. Let me delete this here. Okay, and so when we are dividing 40 by 10, we have got 4 here. Divide 100 by 10, we have got 10. So this is your 40% turned into a fraction in this. Moving on. So now the second part, we are going to talk about percentages to decimals. Percentages into decimals. So let's have a look at this. Again, we are going to use 30%, which is 30 over 100. Now, what does this mean? It's basically, we can say this is 30 divided by 100 or 30 over 100. Now looking at the denominator, we have got 100 in the denominator. How many zeros does 100 have? 2. So 2 zeros. Now look, what are we doing here? We are dividing. So whenever you are dividing, we move basically the decimal place to the left. Now you must be thinking there's no decimal point here in a 30. But look, every whole number has an invisible decimal place here because every whole number can be written as 30.00. So there is a decimal point here. Now, when you divide, you look at the number of zeros in the denominator. So for example, in 100, you have 2 zeros. So we are going to be moving this decimal point towards the left in how many places? 2 places. So really, it is basically changing into 0.30 or 0.3. So now what we have done here, we have converted 30% basically to a fraction and then changed it to a decimal. Or if I say to you, change 40% to a decimal, you can straight away, once you know how it works, you basically can say, okay, 2 zeros in 100, this is 40. We are moving the invisible decimal place 2 places to the left, so this will become a 0.4. So you can straight away change it to a 0.4. Say we are going to change 50%, have a good guess. This is going to be 0.5. Now, the third thing and the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is finding percentage of quantities. A quantity can be any number, like quantity can be money, so dollars. It can be mass, for example, kilograms. It can be time, for example, minutes, and so on. So these are all quantities. So if you have to find percentage of a quantity, this is how you work it out. So say I'm going to give you an example. Say you've got to find 30% of, say, 250. And let's make it dollars to make it interesting. So 30% of 250, you're going out to Myers and you see something, you see a game and it costs $250 and you think you want to buy it, and they say today you've got specials on and it's 30% off 250. So now you're thinking about changing this 30% and calculating how much discount will you get. So 30% off 250. So the first step is, but first of all, you need to change this 30% to a decimal. And this is known as, when you finish changing it to a decimal, it's known as a multiplier. So first of all, find your multiplier. So 30, we already know how to change a percentage to a decimal. So looking at what we have done over here. So 30% is how much? 0.3. Now remember one more thing. So that's your first step. Your second step is, look at this word off. The word off is always replaced by a times sign, right? So so far we have done what we have done so far. We have changed the percentage into a multiplier, which is basically changing a percent to a decimal, and then replacing off by a times sign. So let's rewrite the whole thing again. 30% changed to 0.3, which is now your multiplier, of replaced by a times sign, and we are not going to write the dollar sign, we are only going to put 250. You can, really depends on how good you are at multiplying decimals, but you can use your calculators for it. So 0.3 times 250, we can do it in two ways. First of all, ignore the decimal point. So 250 times 3, excuse me, 3 times 0 is a 0, 5 3 is a 15, carry over 1, 3 2 is a 6 and 7. So we are going to put a decimal here and it's 75. So say a 30%, you're going to write it as in words, full sentence. 30% of $250 is $75.